takes on sports. I am Nathan Tibbetts, and with me as always is Nathan Kwan. We've got a lot to recap, especially this past weekend with the Super Bowl happening in Nathan and Kwan's hometown. What happened? What happened, Nathan? Take it away.
You tell me, man. It was just a complete set of two different games. I think the first half really, and the first 2.5 quarters of that game was really shocking to me. The way Atlanta was running on all cylinders. Their defense really was outstanding. They confused Tom Brady. They got pressure on Brady. Brady looked like, frankly, Brock Osweiler out there at NRG Stadium. He was late with throws. He was throwing behind receivers. He was overthrowing receivers. The Falcons pass rush really got to Brady, and that was causing him to kind of be antsy in the pocket. And that's really how you beat Brady, is you get pressure on him early, and then even if the protection holds up, he has that kind of sense that there's people around him, and that makes him inaccurate. On the other side of the ball, I think the Patriots defense really struggled as well. Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, they were gashing them on the ground. I don't remember a team doing that to New England's defense like what Atlanta was doing. The speed on the field, Matt Ryan was making all the throws. And so after that pick six, I thought this game was over at 21-0. The biggest comeback in Super Bowl history was 10 points. And so it was 21-3 at halftime. And then the second half started, and New England got a 3-and-out on the first possession. And we thought that, okay, here's the comeback. Tom Brady's not going to go down like this. And then next thing you know, it's 28-3. And then that's when the game kind of changed.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just like we were talking about this during the game, but it was just like it looked like this was finally the end of the Patriots dynasty that they, like we were talking about before, they hadn't really faced this type of competition for pretty much the entire season outside of maybe even Pittsburgh. But they had never faced an offense like the one that Matt Ryan was running, and the one being coached by Kyle Shanahan. And I was riding high. I was like, hey, all the things I predicted were happening. They were getting to Brady. I believe his name was Jarrett, ended up having 3 sacks on the day, and was at the time looked like he was in the running for MVP of the Super Bowl. But wow, it changed on a dime. Brady all of a sudden started hitting his wide receivers, his no-name receivers, and once it started going to the fourth quarter, it just felt like, this Patriots team is playing a lot better than they were before. But at the same time, this Falcons team had so many chances to put away this game. There were 2 chances that I remember specifically where they were in field goal range and could not get a field goal. One of them was after the onside kick, where they recovered it in Patriots territory, and they just could not get into field goal range. And the second time, they were in field goal range, and then a combination of getting sacked and penalties pushed them all the way to midfield. And so after a while, it was just like, are they actually going to make this comeback? And they did. And I am at this, and on top of all that, Julian Edelman had this incredible miracle catch, and it was just like, oh my God, this is the Patriots having their revenge for 2007, 2008, that David Tyree catch. Like, Brady is Satan, I am convinced, and just the Falcons defense could not get a stop. And by the time it was overtime and they won that coin toss, the game was over. It was so clear that the Patriots were going to win. What are your thoughts on this the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history?
I think all the praises we said about Kyle Shanahan the past couple of weeks, I think he legitimately blew that game for the team. As you mentioned, the play calling was questionable throughout. The Patriots had scored a touchdown and they missed the extra point, so it was 28-9. And then they try an onside kick and they actually commit a penalty, and Atlanta recovers it. And they have 2nd and 1 from the New England 32. They have one of the best kickers in the game in Matt Bryant, and they got a holding penalty, which pushed them back. And then they threw an incomplete pass, and then they got sacked, so out of field goal range. And then New England gets the ball back. They drive down the field. Brady starts to hit his receivers. And then next time, as you mentioned, Matt Ryan, he played a role as well. He fumbled on a sack, and then New England got the ball deep in Atlanta territory, scored a quick touchdown, quick 2-point conversion. And then the final drive, Atlanta finally actually puts up a pretty good drive. Julio Jones had one of the most amazing catches I've ever seen in a Super Bowl. Ball is thrown down the right sideline, and he leaps full extension, got the feet down, controlled the ball. And, I mean, that play should have sealed the game. I mean, they were all the way down to the 22-yard line, and then it was a running play that they lost yardage. And then they called a pass, which made no sense to me. They could have run the ball 3 times and then kicked the field goal, one of the best kickers in the league. Then it'd be a 2-possession game, and that game is pretty much over. But they call a pass play. They get a holding call, and, I mean, they get pushed back and out of field goal range. And as soon as they punted that ball after that sequence, I knew that game was going to go to overtime, because if you don't finish against New England and you give Tom Brady opportunity after opportunity, he's going to kill you. And, I mean, with 3:30 left, he was backed up at the 9. I just felt this game was going to be tied. And, those are the moments that Brady has thrived on. I mean, he's the greatest quarterback of all time for a reason. And then when that game got tied and they won the toss in overtime, it was ball game. I mean, I didn't see any way Atlanta could have recovered. I will say Atlanta's defense played a hell of a game. I just think certain decisions on the other side of the ball caused them to be out there so many plays. I mean, we've seen this past season with the Texas Longhorns, where their defense would be playing an outstanding game, and then their offense is so bad that eventually they start to wear down because they're just out there so many plays. And they got to a point where they couldn't stop anything that the Patriots were doing.
Yeah,
I will say
Kyle Shanahan. I'll say this: Kyle Shanahan was maybe just giving an ode to his alma mater by doing that. So.
No, I will say the NFL overtime rules, I'm sure there's a lot of people that hate them. I get the point where you don't want to be like college, where you completely take out the kickoff in the return game and the punt return game as well. But it's absurd that one team can win the toss and drive down the field and the game is over and the other team doesn't get a possession. I mean, it's equivalent. I heard Bob Costas mention this. It's equivalent in baseball. Like, if it's Game 7 of the World Series and it goes into extras, the top of the inning, the visiting team hits a home run and the game's over. Like, the home team doesn't get a chance to bat. And so, I mean,
agreed.
There's really no perfect system, since football is so violent, and you have to find a way to like end the game, like without playing like another additional 15-minute period. But I think that's something that they need to revisit.
Absolutely agreed. It's exciting that like this was the first time ever that the Super Bowl has gone to overtime. So that's nice. But like, because of that, we see like a lot of the problems with it. And like, do you really want the final game of the season to be decided in that way, where you have 2 of the best teams in the league, and the other side of that, you're not going to see Matt Ryan try to make that comeback. You're telling me that you don't want to see that at all. If you're Roger Goodell, you don't want to see Matt Ryan and like have the tension and the drama of him trying to come back and tie the game after Brady had already marched down the field and done the same. Like, you don't want to see that. You don't want to see that drama, really? But I mean, that is what it is. I mean, and like, I will say this: Roger Goodell made his own bed and he was forced to sleep in it, and that gave me so much joy. Like, if granted, as much as sorry to my friend that's a Pats fan, I like you, but like, I absolutely loathe the Patriots. Like, I gotta be real. I gotta be true to myself. I loathe the Patriots, especially after it turned out that both like Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft, and to some extent Brady voted or supported Trump. Like, I absolutely loathe them. I loathe the fact that they've now tied the Cowboys in terms of overall Super Bowl victories. And I absolutely love them. The only thing that got me through it was seeing Roger Goodell, that weasel of a man, have to hand Brady and shake his hand and hand over the Super Bowl trophy to Robert Kraft, and then seeing him scurry like the little roach that he is away from the whole podium. Just seeing that, and like, I actually made that exchange the background of my phone for the week. And that part of it felt good, but everything else was just it's frustrating, especially since like this was far and away like the worst performance that the Patriots did in order to win a Super Bowl. Like far and away, I feel like the times that they lost to Eli Manning, which still makes no sense to me. The games that they lost to Eli Manning, like those were better performances than this past game for the Patriots, in my view. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I mean, they were down and out. They were down for the count. I think statistically, they were running analytics on it. They had Atlanta had a 95% chance of winning at some point, and I just feel for that city. They're very similar to the city of Houston in their lack of sports championship success. Their last championship was in 1995, the last time the Rockets won a championship for the city. And the way their teams have been so bad over the years, Atlanta Hawks have never done anything. The Braves would win that division in the NL East, but they would get knocked out in the first round every year. And the Falcons have never done anything.
They're in the cellar too.
Yeah,
the Braves.
As bad as I felt watching that game and watching that collapse with me rooting for the Falcons, like I couldn't even imagine if I was a fan of that team, how I can recover and how that team can recover from that. I mean, you saw what happened to Carolina this past year, and the history isn't good for the Super Bowl runner-up the following year. Usually, statistically, they never have a good year, and they aren't likely to make the playoffs either. But I mean, I don't know how you recover from that sort of collapse.
Yeah.
And really, I think it just capped off a year in sports where it was a year of epic comebacks / chokes from teams in all the sports. So Golden State was up 3-1 on Cleveland and collapsed, and that series ended on an epic Game 7. You had the World Series with the Cleveland Indians up 3-1, and that series ending on an epic Game 7 that went into extra innings. You had a great national championship game where Alabama was up 10 points and Clemson came back to win with 1 second left. The WNBA finals also went down to the final play. And so it was just an amazing year for championship moments in sport. And so if nothing else, this was another for that montage. But I mean, part of me, I just still can't believe what happened to Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like 2011 back when, I mean, I remember as a sports fan from DFW, from Dallas, Texas, this was kind of like 2011 where you saw like teams that got in and they were up big and they kind of collapsed for reasons I can't remember, you know. But yeah, it reminded me a lot of 2011. Like this could be the Falcons version of the 2011 World Series in terms of what happened to the Rangers after that. I mean, like there are certain ways that you can lose that kind of like, I don't want to say like mentally scar you. Like I'm not going to say like, oh, they have PTSD. Like no, like I mean, it's just at the end of the day, it's just sports. So it's not like this isn't anything that's going to be like too traumatic for them. But there are certain things that play through your head when you're trying to do your job, and like they can really throw you off. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can mentally get past that. I mean, the thing about this, and this is what I'll give them credit for, is the thing about this Falcons team is that they're still kind of young. I mean, Matt Ryan is kind of getting up there, but fortunately for him, he's just a quarterback. And so well, I wouldn't say that like, oh, you can keep playing quarterback until you're old. I mean, like I think he proved this year that he can be an elite quarterback. And I mean, the people that he's surrounded with, like Julio Jones and Devontae Freeman and all that, like they're all still pretty young. So that I can definitely see them, and plus like they have a very young defense, and I think especially with the talent that they have and the talent that they should be able to add in either the draft or or free agency, they should be at least able to come together better, sort of bounce back better than a lot of the runner-ups have the past 5 years. But I mean, it's not. I would say like these types of losses. These types of collapses are hard to get past, especially if you've never won it before. If this was like your best chance to ever like to win your first and you blow it that way, it's hard to like sort of like mentally get back up. But I mean, and that's the thing with sports in general, is that like it's a constant getting knocked down. You lose more than you win at first, but unless you're Ezekiel Elliott or Dak Prescott, but even then, they lost at the worst time, arguably. But that being said, it's going to make for an interesting offseason for a lot of teams. How do you see the Texans going forward now that the NFL season is over and it's the official start of the offseason? What do you think the Texans are going to try to do?
Well, yeah, I think watching the game and watching Atlanta's defense fly around and so many young players like Keanu Neal, Deion Jones, and Grady Jarrett, I think that's the type of players that the Texans need, especially at the linebacking core. And we talked about this a little bit a couple of weeks ago about they really need to upgrade the speed on that defense, especially in the linebacking core. And I think having a cover safety that comes up and helps in the run game and really makes plays with so much speed, I think is the way the NFL is going nowadays, especially with offenses moving into a more of a spread look where you have so many playmakers on the field. Obviously, quarterback is priority number one. And so Deshaun Watson is the top of the NFL draft boards, but then there's other prospects out there as well, like Patrick Mahomes. So that's going to be key number one. I think the Texans also made news this week that they're moving their training camp to the Greenbriar in West Virginia. And so the Saints had used that facility the past couple of years for their training camp. It's going to be the first time that the Texans have their training camp away from the city of Houston. They would have it right at their practice facility next to NRG Stadium, and there would always be fans that would come out. They would give up tickets for free, and you'd have to get on there right when they release them because there's so much want for those tickets. And the interaction with the players, taking pictures, signing autographs, and the Texans decide to take all that away from them. And for me, I don't agree with this decision at all. I think, for one thing, heat and humidity in Houston, sure, it gets unbearable at times in August, but they have a multi-million-dollar practice bubble that they air conditioned, fully indoor, that they use when it gets too unbearable outside. And you're really taking this away from your fans, right? Your fans are what you do this for. I mean, your fan base is there to support you, and they've supported this team through all the ups and a lot of downs through the years. And to make this decision, take this away from them, I don't agree with. I think Bill O'Brien is trying to get more control of the situation. So with West Virginia, you're going to have less of a media circus. Not every blog will be able to get out there. You'll only probably have the major TV stations and the Houston Chronicle and a couple of radio stations maybe, but you're going to have more of a control on that. And I guess you're going to get a little bit more of camaraderie, perhaps. So being on the road away from the hometown, so you can really focus your team and build those relationships and teamwork, I guess, away from all the noise at home. Even with the positives, I don't agree with that decision.
Yeah, it just seems like so sort of out of place because it's just I mean, no offense to West Virginia, and I understand that this Greenbriar is not in the middle of nowhere, but I mean it's also just this is really far removed from just any sort of interest. And I mean, I guess maybe the big thing was that they wanted to get away from just as many distractions as possible. But I mean, it's also just I mean, no offense to West Virginia, but why West Virginia? You know, I mean, I know, I mean, as a Cowboys fan, I know, I understand the precedent of trying to go to somewhere that's out of state or just away from the fans. I mean, even the Cowboys have done training camp at San Antonio, and I mean, obviously, most famously in Oxnard, California. You know, but I mean, at the same time, it kind of makes sense because it's California. It's great weather. You know, you don't have to ever worry about having to practice inside a huge bubble just because it gets too muggy or too hot. It's just the weather is great. So, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, kudos on Greenbriar for attracting them, and hope they are able to keep it up. I guess. But yeah, I mean, good luck with that. Yeah, I mean, on the Cowboys end, in terms of what they should do for the offseason, I mean, the big question going forward is just what do you do with Tony Romo? Because I mean, clearly at the end of the day, I mean, he's paid. He goes against the cap so much, and yet. I mean, at this point, you're going to be rolling with Dak Prescott, who just won, Offensive Rookie of the Year. they're putting all their chips in him. I mean, at the very least, they're gonna. I definitely imagine them trying to see what they can get for Romo and try to trade him. But like at the same time, like they can't trade him to a team that Romo feels is not going to be good for him, like i.e. like the New York Jets. So I mean, if there are not enough teams that like Romo would be interested in that would be willing to part with anything, I could definitely see them like cutting, just like waiving Romo and letting him go to wherever he wants to go. But on top of that, they really got to focus on that defense and what to do. They have a lot of free agents on that side of the ball, specifically the secondary. I mean, granted, I know the secondary was ranked first overall as a unit by Pro Football Focus, which, I mean, as a Cowboys fan, I mean, while I will definitely say that like they definitely improved this year, I would not go so far as to say they were the best secondary in the NFL. But that being said, like I hope they try to bring back Barry Church. I mean, Brandon Carr and Mo Claiborne would be interesting to, like, if you can maybe bring back both, but have them like they would both have to be on very cheap contracts. Specifically Mo Claiborne, just because like he's just someone that like he finally seemed to turn a corner earlier this past year, but then just like the big problem throughout his entire career has been injuries. And I know we traded up to get him with the sixth overall pick in order to get him. But I mean, at this point, I think they also might be just better off just like cutting ties and maybe like either trying to sign a good free agent in free agency, or just trying to get someone in the draft this year, especially since this draft is going to be deep at two positions that they really need, which is cornerback and defensive end. I think that's probably going to be like how they fill those holes this offseason. I don't see them trying to go out and get like a high price free agent, but again, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I think that's really it going forward. Another big question is going to be like how they how Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott, how they seeing if they can avoid the sophomore slump, especially since like there have been rumors now that Ezekiel might have some trouble in terms of domestic abuse, which I pray to God, like hopefully that he did not do those things, because I mean, it's at that point, then I kind of wish, like, it's going to sound crazy, but like, I mean, how do you associate with someone like that, especially after especially after like doing that with Greg Hardy, you know? It's just, I mean, I would be very, God, anyway, but yeah, but enough of that. I mean, there's just sometimes when it's just like when like as someone that like likes the NFL or just like likes football in general, that it's just like it becomes hard to like be a fan of the sport when there's so many that like have that type of trouble and they're not really like punished with it. But anyway, but
yeah, and I mean, this will take forever if we talk about it, but I also think it's a culture in the league where players are really expendable, and there's a lot of issues regarding counseling and mental health and the role of concussions of that. I was reading an article about Joseph Randle, who was a Dallas Cowboys running back a couple of years ago, and all the troubles he went through, and really
he just got in trouble for assaulting his cellmate. Yeah.
Right, and I mean, the article painted a picture where he needed help a long time ago, and although there were options that were given to him, I do think that the NFL and the Cowboys could have done more. But that's something we can. It's a bigger issue that we can touch on a future show.
Oh, agreed. Yeah, and not to get further into it. I mean, like that also kind of like reaches back to just like American society in general and how we treat like people who struggle with mental health, and how we end up like just throwing them in prison instead of like, you know, like mental health centers. I mean, not to get too much into further depth, but I mean, like there have always been, like when he got in trouble again this past week, people come out from OK State who said like they've never had this trouble with Joseph Randle before. Like he was a good student. I remember like someone that was actually his classmate saying like he started off wanting to do engineering, and he was someone that was like very clearly smart, and just to see him now just like such a huge fall from grace. It's heartbreaking. But yeah, I think we kind of have to move on.
Yeah, so let's move on to the NBA. The Rockets had a soft week in their terms of schedule. They only had 2 games. They had 2 wins against 2 very bad Eastern Conference teams. They beat the Magic on Tuesday night. It was their 28th game with 15 or more threes, which is an NBA record that they broke, which was Golden State's record last year. So they continue to shoot threes at a historic pace. James Harden had 25 points and 13 assists on Tuesday night, which gave him 30 games of 25 plus points and 10 plus assists. He joins only Oscar Robertson and Nate Archibald as players in NBA history that have done that. On Thursday night, they beat the Charlotte Hornets. James Harden had 30 points, 11 rebounds, and 8 assists. They came back after a sluggish first half, and its defense really picked up. They held Charlotte to 41 second half points. Despite not having Eric Gordon, Nene, and KJ McDaniels, who are all out. And so, granted, Charlotte is a pretty bad basketball team. That game was hard to watch at points, but the Rockets defense has, been off and on this year, but when they're good, they can really shut down opposing teams. So they have a game tonight against Phoenix, and then they have a big game against Miami. Miami Heat are the hottest team in the NBA. They've won 13 games in a row. And this
pun intended.
No, yeah. The streak started with a win against the Rockets, and so Houston teams always seem to start long winning streaks. Houston Texans, Green Bay Packers, but Miami, they've gone from really a lottery contender to a playoff contender in the span of a couple of weeks. Goran Dragic has been great for them, as well as Hassan Whiteside, and they've really gotten contributions up and down the roster. James Johnson has been outstanding. Rodney McGruder, who's a young player from Kansas State, has stepped up as well. So Miami is rising in the Eastern Conference, and they're actually only a game out of the 8th spot, which is currently held by Detroit. And so that will be an interesting game to see. Their schedule throughout the streak has been kind of soft. They haven't really faced too many contenders. They did beat the Rockets and the Warriors within that span, but we'll see if they can keep it up once the schedule kind of evens out a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
How about your Mavs?
My Mavs, they went from having a great week to a terrible week in terms of winning. They went from beating the San Antonio Spurs and the Cleveland Cavaliers to losing to losing 2 in a row. One against Portland. Can't even remember the second one. I think it was Memphis, right? They lost. I mean, they just won. They beat the Utah Jazz in overtime this last night. So that was kind of nice to see, I guess, in terms of competitiveness. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, I mean, is in the middle, is in between, like either making the playoffs or like being a good draft pick, and they're right now just stuck in the middle, which I mean, really helps neither their present situation or their future situation. I mean, it's nice to see Dirk really come back and show a little bit of his old form last night. I mean, Harrison Barnes has been doing pretty well, and I think it's safe to say that like that signing him to that max contract has at least been paying off for a bit. Wesley Matthews is okay. It looks like Yogi Ferrell has come back down to earth, which is kind of unfortunate because I like the guy, but like, whatever. Seth Curry's he's okay. Wes Matthews is okay as well. I mean, this isn't exactly a great team, but it's okay. I mean, for some reason they still have Andrew Bogut in spite of the fact that like he doesn't want to be there anymore. But yeah, it's just a frustrating season all around. I mean, honestly, I was kind of looking forward to this team tanking and just like trying to get like an actual superstar through the draft, which they've been very negligent of. But looks like that's going to go away. Yeah, this is just like it's a perplexing team to watch because they go from highest of highs to lowest of lows within 2 weeks, and it's just. I don't know where this team is what this team is trying to do anymore. But I mean, they're definitely not the biggest. They're definitely not that big of news for the NBA, especially this week. I think it's time we talk about the Oakley incident.
So the New York Knicks are the biggest joke outside of perhaps Sacramento, but they've been the biggest joke in the NBA this year. I think that Charles Oakley incident just kind of sums up their season. First of all, on the incident, so Charles Oakley has felt disrespected by the organization. He's been critical of management, which really, I mean, it's called for. The team has not done anything in the past decade. Really, in the past 20 years, they had that one NBA Finals appearance when they were the 8th seed with Jeff Van Gundy, and they got all the way to the finals and lost to the Spurs. But other than that, it's been 20 years of horrible basketball in New York. You have the team president in Phil Jackson wanting to trade Carmelo Anthony, and then Carmelo Anthony's refusing to waive his no trade clause. He's like trying to stick it out there despite the team being so bad. Back to the Oakley incident. So he felt disrespected. So he claims he bought a ticket, went to the game, and he was just, wanting to enjoy the game. And then security came by and told him you have to leave because James Dolan told security that we can't have Oakley at the game. Of course, the Knicks refuse all those accusations. They say Oakley was belligerent and violent, and he started the whole incident. And at a certain point, they just had to have him leave for the public safety and not to disturb the public in general. I tend to think that with all the witnesses that we'll get the full story eventually, but something doesn't check out. The Knicks fired their head of security yesterday, and so if they say that they did everything right and Oakley was in the wrong, then why did they fire their head of security? And so clearly there's something fishy there, and we'll find out more about it probably with some witness accounts eventually. But that team is so bad, and I think they're kind of like what you're talking about with the Mavs. They're kind of stuck in the middle. They're not as bad as like the Brooklyn Nets or the Philadelphia 76ers. They have a lot of veterans on the roster and not a lot of young players. And so they're kind of this old team that doesn't really have many options other than Kristaps Porzingis, obviously, who's their future. And they're not good enough to make the playoffs, and they're not bad enough to get a top lottery pick. And so it's a situation where Knicks fans are right to want Phil Jackson out and want Carmelo out and just start over.
Yeah, no. Also yesterday, the news came out that he was that Charles Oakley has now been banned for life from Madison Square Garden. So, I in a weird way, I feel for him, especially since from what I've seen, a lot of New York Knicks fans are on the side of Charles Oakley, because James Dolan has run this team into the ground. I mean, like you said, this team has not had any success since 1999 when they lost to the Spurs, and they've you sort of compared the situations to the Mavs, but I will say top down the Mavs organization is far better than the situation with the Knicks. The Knicks just top down just are so incompetent. Outside of just Phil Jackson and Kristaps Porzingis, there's really not much to look forward to with that team. At least with the Mavs, you have an owner who, for all intents and purposes, cares about winning. Mark Cuban did tell Don Nelson to pass on Giannis Antetokounmpo and trade back, but in his defense, he was trying to save cap space in order to try signing a superstar, and it was more so the superstars just deciding not to come to Dallas. Which I don't blame him, but even still, well, outside of Deron Williams, I blame Deron Williams for not coming in when he was still in his prime. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, no, it's it's been a poorly run team for the past 20 years, and there's really no future with this team outside of Porzingis. Carmelo, I have no idea why Carmelo thinks he should, in terms of winning. I don't understand why Carmelo wants to stay in with the Knicks. He's really the Knicks have actually been worse since the Carmelo trade, arguably. Just they did at least make a playoff appearance with Tyson Chandler and Mari Stoudemire around I think it was 2012, right? But after that, it was nothing. It's been nothing. They've been really just a nothing entity, and just Charles Oakley, I think, represents a lot of those frustrations for the Knicks fans, and the fact that now he's banned from MSG is just is absurd. And I think at the end of the day, what was probably happening was just like Charles Oakley was like jawing with James Dolan the entire time, and James Dolan, being the owner, was just like, you know what, I'm done with you, man. And he called security, and then Oakley decided to get chippy. And I've also been hearing that like Charles Oakley is like some sort of like has always been like a thug or something like that. He's not a thug. He's just he's always been a defensive minded player. Back then, this is not like a continuation about that. He at the end of the day, he kind of, like I said, he kind of represents that sort of like grittiness of New York City, and that's how it is. And now he's banned from the mecca of all basketball, and James Dolan is still who he is. He's someone that's found a way to ruin the pretty much the only basketball team in New York, in like the sort of like the epicenter of all basketball. And even though he still has like arguably the greatest mind for the sport in the past 20 and 30 years, he still is unable to win with that. So yeah, it is what it is.
They've had bad signing after bad signing. Allen Houston famously at the 6-year, $100 million contract back in the day. And then they had head coach after head coach. Larry Brown failed there, Isaiah Thomas, Don Chaney, Lenny Wilkins. They signed Amari Stoudemire to a contract at the time, and he was overpaid for that, and then he got hurt. That team's been a mess. And the Rockets are actually honoring their 50th anniversary this year, and they've had all their former players come back, and to see that versus the Knicks legend being banned from the arena is it's a tale of two different situations. But I want to mention briefly, tonight is probably the most anticipated return this year, with Kevin Durant returning to Oklahoma City after he left for the Golden State Warriors this past year. That game's tonight on ABC. It should be fascinating to see what the response is. I would presume that it would be boos early and often for Mr. Durant.
Oh, agreed. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, especially since like this is still a very competitive OKC team. So at the like it's going to remind me a lot of like after Cleveland, after LeBron left Cleveland, but like it's at least like it's actually going to be a competitive game too, as well. So that's going to be nice too. I mean, what Russell Westbrook has done for this team. I mean, I know we've talked about this plenty of times, just like how stupid like Sam Presti was to like let James Harden go. But I mean, he's basically let like OKC went from having 3 potential MVP candidates this year to just only having 1. And I mean, like what Russell Westbrook has done in terms of carrying this team on his back has been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And just it should be a fun little showdown. And weirdly, like this will probably be the only time I'm rooting for OKC this year. Okay, so one of our fans out there actually wanted to hear a bit more about my experience about going to wrestling that wrestling weekend. So I guess I'll go into that. So I've been following wrestling for about like 2 years now. Yeah, 2 years. Been a while. So basically, from what my experience is, NXT, even though it's like a smaller venue and has like lesser known talent, it was far more passionate. They were the crowd was so hot for the main event, Bobby Roode versus Nakamura, and it was a lot more interesting too, because like everyone's just chanting, like even to the point that they're like trying to force chants. But even then, like compared to the Royal Rumble, I much prefer the crowd that I was with in NXT the night before, just because like they were so like the fans were so clearly into every match and like wanted every match to succeed. And there's like I guess a bit more emotional attachment there. It's like it's kind of comparing sort of like an indie rock versus like stadium, like an arena, like it's like Coldplay versus just like someone playing at emos or something like that. Like it's a smaller venue with smaller stars, but like you have people that are just like going crazy. There's a mosh pit going on. What's going on? This is crazy. It's like sort of like I don't know what this phenomenon is called. I'm sure there should be a name for it, but it's basically just like how like a smaller, sometimes a smaller, more niche audience is far more intense than just one that's like a giant sort of like casual audience. But even still, I would say that. But even on top of that, like the Royal Rumble, like the fans were definitely passionate for AJ Styles versus John Cena. Like that was, in terms of passion, like that's where like that almost like matched NXT's. And considering that one filled the entirety of the Alamo Dome, and hearing nearly 10,000, at least 10,000 to like I forget how many people like are held in the Alamo Dome, but like hearing pretty much the entirety like chanting "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks," and "Let's go AJ" was absolutely just phenomenal. Another big thing, I guess, from Royal Rumble that was kind of interesting too is like, so basically there's this guy named like Roman Reigns who has been like pushed as like the next big thing, but like that was kind of ruined by like the fact that when he was first being pushed, the guy was like not ready at all. And so like the crowd has turned, like a lot of like the more passionate crowd has turned against him, and so he's now kind of a bad guy to them. And so when it was like sort of like the final entrant for the Royal Rumble, it was like number 30. Everyone was expecting it to be someone to be called up from NXT, but ended up being Roman Reigns. And so they got this like he got this like big like boo, like everyone started booing him. And so to me it looked like they were trying to maybe turn him into a bad guy. But so far, like the since like the last two Raws, like he's or like the last two shows, he's really not been like they're still booking him to be a good guy, and it's just sort of it's hard to tell like where they're trying to go with him. But yeah, and I'll also explain like why I was me and quite a few people are like chant Cena sucks, even though clearly he doesn't. But it's kind of basically, imagine like, you know, the reason why everyone hates the Patriots. Well, that's exactly the same reason why everyone hates John Cena, or if they do. But I mean, at least with John Cena, like he's like a decent human being versus like, you know, some of the people on the some of like Brady and Belichick. But yeah,
it's a love-hate relationship. Like everybody loves or hates the Cowboys. Everybody loves or hates the Yankees. Everybody loves or hates the Lakers.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, that's my quick little recap. I'm probably not gonna keep talking about that going forward. But yeah, any shout outs on your end?
Yeah, so shout out to DeMarcus Beasley, U.S. men's national team soccer player legend who re-signed with the Houston Dynamo. They have started training camp and are going to start preseason soon. So he's going to provide some veteran leadership for that really young team that they've really gone young and really tried to upgrade the speed, and so we'll see how they do this year. And also shout out to Malcolm Brown, defensive tackle.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So Super Bowl champion, second year in the league, and so he's a Super Bowl champ. So congrats, hook 'em.
Yeah, finally a Longhorn was a champion this year. Yeah, but yeah, no, definitely shout out to him. Also, I guess like we haven't mentioned this before, but yeah, Bruce Arena has replaced Jurgen Klinsmann at the end of last year. So we have a new, not really a new one, but I guess like we're trying to get that early 2000s magic for the USMNT, and hopefully we can make it past the second round this time of the World Cup. Shout out to Claude Julien, who was the former Bruins head coach and now is unemployed. He just got fired this week. Like this is hockey, so it's. But basically, Claude Julien was on the verge of sort of starting his own dynasty with the Boston Bruins, and sort of having this like very famous system of like a bunch of like tough guys, and they're all like sort of like converging together. It was kind of like the Dallas Stars and of like late 90s, early 2000s. But now he's out of the job. I don't really know where he's going to go. I'm sure someone's going to take a chance on him. Hopefully, it's not the Dallas Stars. Because the Dallas Stars have in terms of personnel do not match what Claude Julien wants to do, especially since one of the best players on the Dallas Stars right now, Tyler Seguin, he's with the team because Claude Julien did not like Taylor Seguin, and like he would be a terrible Claude Julien would be a terrible fit as coach for Tyler Seguin again. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Also, rest in peace to Mike Ilitch, who just passed away today, owner of both the Red Wings and Tigers. He had a good life. Condolences to the family. And also shout out to women's basketball for beating the Baylor Bears and continuing that streak. They're arguably the hottest team in all the nation. And I mean, they got a good chance of at least making it. I could see this team making it to the Final Four. I'm just saying. But yeah, that's really all. Oh, and big shout out to Mike Napoli for re-signing with the Texas Rangers. We'll talk about it more next week when we. I think we should be able to bring in Evan Tenenbaum to talk about it. But yeah, we're trying to get the band back together. Absolutely love that greaseball named Matt Napoli, that human grease machine that he is. But yeah, hopefully this time around we'll finally win the World Series with him. So that's about it. Anything else you want to add?
No, and I will talk to you next week then.
Talk to you then.